And welcome into Gator Bites on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, the Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. The Gator 2022 regular season is in the books at 6-6. They now wait to see what bowl game they will go to. More than likely, it appears, maybe Sin City, right? The Las Vegas Bowl, which would certainly be a first time for Florida out there. Denny, the season ended about a week ago in Tallahassee. I'll give Florida credit, man. After that Vanderbilt loss, I didn't know what to expect. They battled. There is no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, it's the same old story. The defense couldn't get timely stops when they needed it, and Florida State just simply outscored them.
Yeah, I went to the game, and, man, it was a blast. It really was. I mean, atmosphere-wise.
Did you see the TV numbers? 6.7 million.
What I was going to say, I was very much against the Friday night deal, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It took a game, put it in the national spotlight that otherwise would have been played Saturday at noon.
It wasn't going to get 6.7 million Saturday at noon.
Probably wouldn't have got two. Yeah, probably wouldn't have got two. So, I mean, I think it was good for both programs in that sense of it let the rest of the country know what we all know here, that Florida State is a great rivalry, but it hasn't been for a while, right? So you forget an 18 or 22 or 25-year-old right now consuming college football for the first time as an adult don't know about Florida State, what it used to be. And so it was fun to put that in front of everybody and say, yeah, this is what this is. And listen, Doak was lit, man. It was a phenomenal atmosphere and a great time. Had a blast. But, yeah, at the end of the day, kind of this same old story, right? It was the team fought like they've done all year. I mean, this one thing you can say about that team is I don't remember a single time where I thought, man, they're quitting. They had moments of glory. They had moments of like, wow, okay. But at the end of the day, there wasn't the consistency. And that's what the season looks at, right? It's first down, second down, stops, third down, give it up. And there's just not that consistency or wasn't that consistency that you need to be a top-flight program where Florida State had it.
I'm never going to be confused for being a football coach or a football quarterback guru like you are with 6 points. You've been a coach at the high school ranks. You work with high school, college, and NFL players at 6 points. So I'm just going to give you my thoughts as the media guy on the couch here with a cold beer and some chicken wings. 13-play drive at the end of the game to try to go down and tie it. Montrell Johnson touched the ball twice. Trevor Etienne did not touch the ball, and they threw it to the backup tight end 4 times. That's nonsense to me. I could not believe the play calling on the final drive of the game. Your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't. They drove the ball. They got lucky with the penalty, right?
Well, the 4th and 18. Look, Gator fans are upset about the face mask that wasn't called, and I get it.
Yeah.
That 4th and 18 interference call was horrible against Florida State.
Yeah, but I can see what you're saying. Like I'm processing what you're saying, and I haven't thought about that. But I don't know. I guess their plan was put it in 15's hands and let's see if we can hit something big. Didn't work, so it wasn't a good plan, right? Like, I mean, if it would have worked, we'd been like, oh, okay. But it didn't. So, I mean, I think that's about as far as it goes. But, I mean, Johnson and Etienne proved that duo is going to be a blast to watch.
They will be, assuming they both come back, and there's no reason to believe they won't, they will be phenomenal next year.
The Etienne family is just ridiculously talented. I mean, you know, we've talked about this. The Jacksonville Etienne, you can make the argument, is one of the most exciting players in the NFL already. And now little brother has just immediately put himself in that same conversation. So, I mean, thanks, Miss Etienne, right, for those two. But I think at the end of the day, like, that was a weird thing because before the season you thought, man, if they could get to 8 wins, that would be crazy successful. If they could have pulled that game off on Friday night, I almost think in some ways like Florida fans would have gone to the offseason with, okay, it's about what we expected. But I don't think 6-6 was on anybody's bingo card.
No, and you lose to every rival, right? You lose to Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Florida State, inexcusably lose to Vanderbilt, which the very next week Vanderbilt goes out there and loses by, 50 to Tennessee. I mean, it was a bad scenario at the end of the year.
Inconsistency I was just talking about. I mean, that's what it is. That's the year. There's days where they look like they could beat everybody, and then there's days where they look like they couldn't beat anyone. So we end the season not knowing what that team really was other than inconsistent.
Understanding that at the wide receiver and tight end position against Florida State, they essentially had very, very unproven commodities with the exception of Pearsall. And Pearsall played
and
great.
Hats off to him, by the way, for plowing through that game.
Yeah.
He could have easily sat that out.
In the first half, he was phenomenal. Florida State adjusted, and then Florida had a hard time in the second half. But Anthony Richardson, 9 of 27, certainly not to back you in a corner, obviously, because you're Anthony's trainer.
He was 9 for 27.
Not probably the way most people envision, more than likely, his Gator career coming to an end. More than likely.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I was there, and so I didn't have a TV broadcast telling me that he had missed 10 in a row or whatever. I don't think people in the stadium realized, because in that, and I'm not like putting on for Ant here. I'm just telling the truth. Like, inside of that little streak was 3 beautiful balls that were dropped.
The touchdown, well, yes, but the touchdown to Pearsall in the first half, the one where he just hit him right in stride and just left the corner in the dust, that was beautiful.
Yeah, but I want to stay on the 9 of 27 thing. I want to stay on that streak because inside of that streak is interesting. There was 2 or 3 plays where right read, bad execution on Anthony's part, just bad throws, I should say. One of which would have gone for 30 or 40 yards. Like, one of which, the guy it was checked down, and he was wide. There was nobody on that side of the field. So that hurts. But then there was also like those, 2, 3, 4 plays where he made an incredible throw, absolutely incredible throw. And to your point about the receivers, like young, inexperienced, tight windows about to get hit, they drop it. And then there was also inside of that same window a couple of runs that you were like, whoa, with Anthony, right? So in the stadium, I don't think anybody really got the sense that, oh, God, this dude's on a cold streak right now. I think that was more of an at-home thing because, from what I understand, the announcers were not slow to remind people of that streak.
Yeah, Brock Osweiler got the business on social media. I didn't think he was that bad on the broadcast, but, man, Gator and Seminole fans alike just ripped him a new one on ESPN, or I guess on ABC.
And everybody talks about the officiating. I will say this about the officiating. It leveled out, and they let them play for the most part. Like, there were a lot of plays on both sides where it was very physical at the perimeter. There could have been pass interference called almost every play for a while, and they let them play. And I didn't think the officiating was bad. I didn't hear the announcers, but I thought let me say it this way. The officiating was equally bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, Florida got the better end of Florida State. They weren't the best crew, but they were fair.
After 4th and 18, that interference call, Gator fans don't have a whole lot to complain about.
No,
that was a terrible call.
Yeah, it was a bad call. Now, they missed one a few plays earlier. Again, I was going to say that. There were 2 inside of that streak as well that were blatant pass interferences that they didn't call. But again, it evened out. It evened out in the end, and as long as the officials are fair and both teams are getting the raw end of the deal, that's fine.
One thing that was very noticeable to me, and we knew it going into the game, but then when you watch it, it just really sticks out to you. Mike Norvell has mastered the transfer portal. He has absolutely mastered the transfer portal. Billy Napier needs to do that. I hope he was taking notes, because effective Monday, I believe December 5th, you would probably know better than me, that's when visits and you can start getting guys out of the portal. So Monday at midnight or whenever, 8 a.m., whenever it officially starts, Napier and that staff need to be on the phone. I think you got to get a dozen plus guys out of the portal, because that Florida State team has been revolutionized because of the transfer portal.
They've been on the phone. Like this transfer portal stuff, this December 5th stuff, y'all don't buy into that. It's a date where people can start stopping in and taking visits. That's all. That's basically what it is. And then a dump of people will be in that transfer portal. But everybody's already dropped the notes. And it doesn't stop. And I'm not saying this about Florida. In fact, I'm not at all. But it doesn't stop coaches from inquiring about whether guys are going in the portal based on, even if they've heard nothing. Mm-hmm. I can assure you that Florida is just like everybody else. The transfer portal recruiting has become a more thorough thing than high school recruiting. 90% of my day the last week and a half has been transfer portal stuff at the college level. Talking to, I wouldn't even know what to guess, 40, 50 schools.
And for people that don't know, we assume most do. A prime example of that is like Jeff Sims, right? The quarterback at Georgia Tech. Denny trained him for years. Jeff Sims is in the transfer portal. College coaches know that Denny is Jeff Sims' guy, for lack of better terminology.
No, I mean, that is a good example, but I also get calls about guys that we train that aren't in the portal and have no intention of going in the portal. But it's, hey, what is such and such thinking, right?
All right.
So these guys put together a board. I just want to finish this thought because I want people to understand how, when we talk about this transfer portal stuff, transfer portal recruiting started in August. Like, those lists started getting compiled, and there's people on staff that their job is basically advanced scouting for current college players that may enter the portal. And so at the end of the year, most schools have their board, their ranking, whether or not the people go in the portal or not. Like, this is our dream scenario. Okay, he's not going in. Who's next? So anything that's done next week is not a spur of the moment thing. There's been a lot of research and effort put into it.
See, I think that's fascinating. And you have a perspective that certainly I don't have. I would imagine people watching and listening don't have as well. I don't know how much of this you can actually get into, but it's not illegal for them to talk to you, obviously. I mean, when people want to inquire about one of your guys in the portal, what is that dialogue? How does that come about? I mean,
and again, this is a Gator podcast, so I don't want to, I'm not talking about the Gators actually on this. The Florida is very thorough. Napier, and again, I only deal with quarterbacks, but Napier is about as thorough as they come. He is going to find everything he possibly can find out about a quarterback, right? But in general, other teams, and I have relationships just like I have at Florida. And so it'll be, just, hey, give me a shot when you can. I want to talk transfer portal. Okay. So is such and such going in? What do you think about such and such? Hey, we're looking at this kid who you don't train. What do you think about him? It's just stuff like that. And it's ongoing. I think the only time it really slows down is during maybe the very beginning of the season. Because once we get done with this one, everybody's going to go to school, and it's going to happen again in March and April when spring ball's done, right? There's going to be a whole new transfer portal recruiting season. So it's a year-round deal, man. It is the equivalent of free agency. It is, you will always be better to build your program through recruiting, but you will be the best you can possibly be if you have a good combination of both, like what Florida State has done.
It's funny, too, because as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, the transfer portal was there, but it wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Well, it wasn't really there. The transfer portal is very new.
Yeah. Well, like, I remember, like, Ryan Smith, right, from Utah, came to Florida. And that was one of the first ones I can remember. Vanez Gooch, remember, transferred from Florida State to Florida. So you got maybe a handful of guys here and there. But
that
now,
had to be old school. That was done the old school way.
Right.
That was like graduate transfer.
Yeah.
You knew somebody that knew somebody that knew this kid may leave. Now, there's much more of a process, and it's probably much easier for the kid and the school.
And the reason why no one transfers, you had to sit out a year.
That's right.
Now
Unless
you don't have to
graduate.
Right. Now you don't have to sit out a year. So as you said, and Lane Kiffin said this last offseason, it is free agency in college football. That's essentially what the transfer portal is.
And by the way, it's equal opportunity. It's because we all are so focused on our own team. Sometimes we see guys hit the portal, and you're like, oh, God, we're getting killed this year. Well, there's two things to know. One, they may have been asked to hit the portal. That happens more times than not. I would say greater than 50% of the people that go in the portal that you're like, basically have been told, we don't really have a spot. Like, why don't you look somewhere else? The second thing is, it's happening to everybody. Alabama has 7 in there. Tennessee had a wave go in. It's not it's literally everywhere. It's part of the game. So if you're seeing these guys enter the portal and you are a Florida fan, do not be alarmed by that. The best of the best of the best have people hitting the portal this year.
Yeah, Florida's seen 2 of them in the last, 48 hours, Avery Helm and Dejon Reynolds.
That's right.
So, today's Gator Bites podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. Can I get a little love? Another season in the books?
Yeah.
In the same piece of paper. I believe this is now year number 4 of the same exact piece of paper.
We've been doing this crap for 4 years.
I think at least 3. I think it's 4. Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that sheet of paper has outlasted a coaching staff at Florida.
Absolutely. This sheet of paper, the same sheet. That's right. Outlasted.
And Florida State.
And Florida State.
Started with the Willie. And it's outlasted 2 in Miami.
And Miami. Yeah. This sheet of paper is an Iron Man. All right. It appears to be the Las Vegas Bowl. That's at least the rumor. You've seen maybe UCLA, maybe Oregon State, but at least that's the rumor. But whatever bowl game they go to, Florida has a little bit of an interesting issue. The Jalen Kitna stuff from earlier this week is awful. Innocent until proven guilty. I'm a firm believer in that, but it certainly does not look good on the surface. One would think that Jalen Kitna has played his final game as a Florida Gator. Anthony Richardson, assuming he goes into the draft, which we still don't know for sure, one would think he would not play in the bowl game either. So at that point, Denny, if you don't have AR and you don't have Kitna and you got to play a bowl game still, I mean, Jack Miller, Max Brown, what could Florida potentially do there in a bowl game scenario?
Ingle?
You think it's a walk-on?
Could be, yeah. Let's turn the tables on this. But to get this out of the way, I don't know what Anthony's doing. Anthony's taken this week to look at this. And we'll make a decision soon, very, very soon.
Because we saw Will Levis last night announce. You're seeing guys start. Jacob Copeland announced last night, so they're starting to come out.
Yeah, so let's just go based on your assumption because it's more fun to do it that way, right? I don't think Jalen Kitna, and I don't even want to talk about what he's going through. That's a legal thing. Like, for us to talk about Marcus is one thing because he didn't break a law.
Right.
This is a very legal thing, so I don't even want to get into that. We all agree. It's horrible if it happened. I don't think he was ever part of the plan, though. Like, he was kind of the default backup because Jack Miller got hurt, and then he kind of got into the season he played. I don't know this, but I don't think that it was ever like, oh, Jalen Kitna's the future starter at the University of Florida. So
he would have had to throw like 5 touchdowns in the bowl game or something.
I don't even know that he would have gotten that chance.
My own point, not for 2023. I was just talking. I mean, if Anthony Richardson doesn't play in the bowl game,
no, follow me on this. So I think if you want to be opportunistic with this, then it forces you to find out what these other guys are, and do they have a chance to be an SEC quality starter? Which, guys, is really freaking hard. Or do you have to hit a home run in the portal and Rashada be the future? Like, you might as well find that out now, right? And I don't know that you're going to find that out because it's not fair. Whoever plays is going to get basically a week of practice and play a game against a UCLA team that maybe not have that, if that's who they play, that probably don't have as many people sitting out, right? You might as well find out what the kid's made of. So if the kid goes out, let's say it's Jack Miller. I don't know what the deal with Jack Miller is, by the way. Have no clue. But let's just hypothetically say it's him. And let's say he goes out there and he throws for 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That does not mean that he can't play. But what you're going to see inside of that is, like, what's his pacing? What's his timing? Is the game too fast? Like, what do we need to work on if he's got to get ready? It's not a bad thing because you're getting film that you take to the offseason and go, okay, we at least got some film. These are the 2 or 3 things we need to work on.
And Max Brown was a guy that was brought in
by the staff. So to me, if you want to see, I mean, Jack Miller was too, for that matter. I was going to say, the 2 people that we're talking about were both brought in by the staff. Anthony Richardson, Jalen Kitna were not.
Maybe you play both of them. Maybe, you play one for a quarter, the other for a quarter. I mean, what is the Las Vegas Bowl in actuality? It's a preseason game. I mean, it's to get ready for next year is what it is.
This one is almost just as meaningless as last year's. Almost. Yeah. Last year's was more meaningless because the staff wasn't really in place coaching. This one's not far behind it, though.
Let's assume, and I think, again, safe assumption, at least to my thoughts. If I'm wrong, then I'll be wrong, and, you know, that'd be a great story at that point. But assuming Florida needs to find a starting quarterback next year, December 5th, commitments can actually begin December 5th. Like, I'm transferring to said school.
Right.
If Florida needs a starting quarterback, would you be under the assumption that by Christmas Day, Florida will have a starting quarterback out of the transfer portal?
I have no idea.
So you don't know if it's going to be a quick process?
No, because of the thoroughness I talked about. Like, we got a couple kids going through this right now, and I know what we've got ahead of us the next couple of weeks when it comes to looking at schools, and you know, NIL plays in now, and there's just so many moving parts. They could have their guy by Christmas, but we just may not know it. In fact, I would bet that's the situation. I would bet that at some point in December, they know who their guy is going to be, and whether or not he goes forward with that before is anybody's guess. But there's one timetable here. You have to be enrolled in school in January. Mm-hmm. So it's if it doesn't happen by Christmas, it's got to happen by January 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. I don't know what the last day for enrollment in winter classes is. It's usually, a week after it starts. So that could be, I guess, January 15th. But regardless, it's got to happen quickly after.
Why is there such a prevalent rumor out there about Sam Hartman?
I don't know. I mean, now we're hearing other rumors about other people.
And by the way, I would love Sam Hartman.
Yeah,
I would not complain about that at all. But that's like the one that leads me to believe it's not going to happen, because that's the one rumor you keep hearing over and over and over.
It's interesting, though, because, and I just thought about this. If you're hearing that rumor, somebody's wanting you to hear that rumor.
Somebody started it, exactly.
Because like I said, we have so many guys going through this right now. There's zero leaks in this. Like, if the only way I could get a leak about Jeff Sims is if I planted that leak somewhere.
If you went to 24/7 or you went to Rivals or any of those sites.
Or if another school did.
Yeah.
Right? Or if another school was like, hey, we want people to think we're getting Jeff Sims, or we want our fan base to like that. That's the only two scenarios that would happen. So I don't know. Or somebody just makes it up and people run with it, which could also really be the case.
Yeah, and you think about...
I heard the Hartman rumors like a month ago.
Right, Hartman rumors have been out forever. Well, he's already transferred once, right? Hartman from like Northwestern to Wake Forest.
I have no idea.
I want to say Wake Forest is already his second school.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sam Hartman.
Oh, I do too.
I don't...
I would have no problem. He runs a weird offense, though.
Yeah.
But even so, he graduated, I believe, from Wake Forest, so he'd be able to immediately
It would just
play.
be weird that it'd be his third college football team.
Yeah.
But
listen, that's going to be the norm.
You think? Three
Absolutely.
college football teams?
There's a bunch of people in the portal right now that will be their third or fourth team.
The thing,
bunch.
If you watch Wake Forest, what it's weird, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on Hartman because we don't know, but they run that offense where, like, you give the running back the football, like, you stand there for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And either he takes it or then Hartman pulls it back. I got news for Sam Hartman. That ain't going to work in the SEC. That ain't going to happen. So you're going to have to...
I mean, listen, it's a genius concept.
Like that?
I don't want my team running it, but it's the equivalent of like the triple option back in the day. You see it one time a year. And you say that about the SEC, but what it does is it neutralizes speed.
And again, for people that haven't seen it, Hartman will take the ball.
It's like a very slow ride rush point.
He'll put the ball out there. The running back and him will like stand together and ask you about dinner Saturday night.
Yep.
And then either the running back takes the ball or Hartman pulls it back. It literally is one of the oddest offenses. It's weird to look at.
Yeah, they've had a ton of success with it. It is very hard to defend, but I don't think anybody else would be running. I don't think that's something that's going to catch on. It started at the high school level, like all this stuff does.
You know, I want to get into Championship Saturday, but we spent so much time on the quarterback for the transfer portal. Other pressing areas, where does Napier need to get guys out of the portal?
Yeah.
I mean, wide receiver. I think you're good at running back, obviously, but what are your thoughts there?
I think wide receiver, obviously, right, and probably some defensive positions. But
I mean, if you assume Pearsall is back, right? He's a junior. and Xavier Henderson would be back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good start at wide receiver, I would think, but I think you certainly need to add more guys.
You gotta have a take the top off guy. Like you have to, and I think they're getting one in a freshman. Like I can't remember
Eugene Wilson.
Yes, that kid is unreal. And he'll play next year at Florida.
Yeah.
He'll be an immediate guy.
Gene, the former Miami commitment's a really good player too. They got good wide receiver class.
Yeah, but I think you definitely want to add one or two more through the portal that have experience. And Florida is probably a place that a lot of people want to go, I would think. But for me, like, and I don't know who this is, but they do. What's the weakest links of that offensive line? Because your run game's got a chance to be special. And that's the first thing I would, if there's NIL money or something like that you've got a budget on, I would spend my first dollars on those.
Yeah.
And I would make sure that next year I can run for 250 yards a game because I don't know the quarterback situation, but I do know I got 2 dudes back there, and I really got 3 dudes back there, possibly a couple more from recruiting. I would shore that up first.
Naquan Wright's probably gone, I would think. I would think Lingard might go too. So at that point, you are going to be down to ETN and Johnson, which is good, but you're going to need to add maybe a running back or two.
They're going to sign a couple. Yeah. They got Webb. They've got
Trayon Webb, right?
Yeah,
perhaps Mark Fletcher at St. Thomas.
I wouldn't worry about the running back position. I wouldn't. I mean, if I'm a transfer, why are you going to come to Florida? You're going to come sit behind those 2 guys?
Yeah, that's fair.
The backs would have time to develop.
Absolutely.
As opposed to receivers, you're going to need some receivers that are going to play.
Well, you need receivers, you need tight ends, and then you basically need everything on defense. There's not one position on defense where I don't think you need help.
I guess my point is, if you're going to have a chance to do something next year, we already know that's going to be on the ground, right? We already know that's a strength. Kind of like the NFL draft, the way the good teams do it is solidify that strength first. Because that's the thing right now that you can point to and go, that's going to win us football games. The other positions, you don't really know. You didn't have success, a ton of success through the air. You didn't have any success defensively. So you're almost starting from scratch there. But that running game, you got to look at and go, okay, let's solidify that.
I had a Gator buddy of mine that said, well, why can't Rashada come in and start next year? You want him starting in Salt Lake City on Labor Day weekend at Utah?
Maybe he can. I don't think he's – there's some guys that come out and you're like, okay, well, if they need to, they could. It's not an ideal situation for anybody. But maybe he can. I mean, if he comes in, he's an early enrollee, throws on 15, 20 pounds, knows the playbook, then, yeah, I mean, as it sits right now, I would think he's probably the favorite if as it sits right now.
This will be our last Gator Bites before December 7th. December 7th, DJ Lagway, a 5-star 2024 kid, is committing, quarterback. Any thoughts on that? Florida thinks they're in it, although apparently he had a great visit to Southern Cal. He tweeted all kinds of stuff about USC and Lincoln Riley, which kind of scared some Gator fans this past weekend. But DJ Lagway's a big one for Florida, right?
It's huge because they went all in on him. They went literally all in on him. Semi-recruited behind him, like Dan Mullen level recruited behind him. But
no better example of that than Colin Hurley here locally.
Right.
Colin Hurley at Trinity Christian committed to LSU in large part because Florida, like you said, has put all the chips on the table for Lagway.
I mean, he really liked LSU.
Well, yeah, right.
But my point being, they better get him. I think he's a good player. I've watched a ton of film on him. I think he's a really good player. I think he's got some things that, just like everybody, he's got to work on. But yeah, I mean, if they don't get him, I think internally there will be a scramble going, okay, what? Because you got to look at that quarterback room. And I mean, you know, with Stokes not coming now, you got to think one of these guys is going to transfer out. So as soon, let's say Ant leaves, Kitna's unavailable. One transfers out, that leaves you with Rashada and one more.
Yeah. And look, I think Florida fans, at least the ones I've talked to that follow recruiting, again, DJ Lagway won't help you for a while, but it would set the tone for the 24 class with a 5-star quarterback. What the concern is the last time Florida knew they were getting a guy was Kermani McClain at Lakeland, and then he leaves you at the altar to go to Miami, so that's why Florida fans are very nervous about December 7th.
What I would do is I'd look at 2 portal guys. I would look at a guy who has played a bunch of football and is the dude and may only be there a year. And then I would look at a guy who we had, as a staff, you had ranked pretty high. You couldn't get them at Louisiana. They're somewhere else sitting behind somebody, and they've got 3 years left, and they can be a developmental guy. You get those two, plus the two you have in your room, plus Rashada, you flip the room around, and now you've got a chance.
Today's Gator Bites podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. All right, Championship Saturday. What I hate about the setup we have right now is like the SEC Championship game is a prime example. It literally means nothing. Georgia could win that game by 50 or lose that game by 50, and it doesn't matter because they're going to the playoff. LSU could win that game by 50, and it doesn't matter because they're not going to the playoff. So I'll watch it. I'll enjoy it. It just means more, as they say. But the SEC Championship game has been, watered down to a preseason exhibition type game on Saturday afternoon. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the whole, is this the first time this has really happened?
No, it's happened pretty consistently.
I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, one year Alabama didn't even go to the championship game and made the playoff.
Yeah, but my point is like the SEC Championship game has meant something.
Yeah, but like last year, right? Georgia,
it's been a good run, is my point.
Georgia loses the championship game, doesn't matter, still gets in the playoff and ultimately wins the national title.
Right, but that was like a quarterfinal game.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deal last year, Georgia, Alabama.
It was, but you knew whoever lost was going to get a mulligan, I guess is my point. It wasn't win or go home.
Yeah.
I'm with Hack on this, and I've been with Hack. Ever since the playoff, most years the ACC championship game has been, like Hack said, it's been kind of a mulligan.
I remember.
I see. It's funny because I guess I don't really care about the play. I'm with y'all on this year's game. Yawn Fest. I probably won't even watch it.
It literally doesn't matter.
But most years, I don't even. I guess I just think about this differently. And I'm not saying I'm right. I don't care about the playoff with it. Like I want to see who's going to win the SEC championship. I want even the year Florida went after they beat LSU or lost LSU in Shoegate. That was a hell of a game, right? And it's like, hey, at the end of the day, you may not go, but you can still say you're SEC champion, right? I think we have as fans, it's like, and the way we look at things as fans, there's only one successful team every year because everybody's like, well, I want to go to the playoffs and I want to win it all. Well, man, that's hard.
We knew that would happen, though, once they incorporated the playoff. And now that they expanded to 12, that's even more true.
No, but I disagree with that because with a 12-team playoff, like LSU this week, might get in a 12-team playoff if they win.
Yeah, that's fair.
LSU would need a win.
I meant in terms of caring about being SEC champion.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
The 12-team playoff is going to matter. Like Kansas State's another prime example.
That's a good point because Alabama was SEC champions last year, and they didn't get much for that.
No, and Kansas State's another one. Like you look at these games on Saturday. Utah ranked number 11. Kansas State ranked number 10. LSU at 14. All these teams. Yeah, a 12-teamer would need to win to get into the 12-team playoff. So that's what's going to make Championship Saturday fun. As it stands tomorrow, or on Saturday rather, Georgia's going to get in regardless. Michigan is going to get in regardless. Most people will tell you TCU is going to get in regardless.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Ooh. See, now, if you're going to put the SEC champion in regardless.
Oh, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just know how this world works.
Who's going to leapfrog TCU?
Anybody. The last thing
Ohio
State.
They
want is TCU in the playoff. We've been there before. We've seen this before.
I think the committee is looking for an excuse to take TCU out.
Absolutely.
Now, again, I'm not saying he's gospel. Like I talked to our boy Matt Hayes earlier today on XL Primetime, and a college football guy for years. He's under the assumption that it doesn't matter for Georgia, Michigan, or TCU. He thinks they're all going to get in. Now, he did say TCU can't lose by 40.
I respectfully disagree. I think if TCU loses, they do not get in.
All right.
I
would disagree with that, but I like the conversation.
I mean, we've seen it before. Was it Cincinnati? Cincinnati got in, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it was it Michigan State?
Well, the problem
we've seen it with teams where it's like, they don't need to be. I know they've had a great season, and then they get just drummed, just demolished.
Those types of teams have to go undefeated.
I agree.
Yeah, if Kansas State wins the game 34-27 on Saturday, I don't know how you knock TCU down when Ohio State just lost by 3 touchdowns at home.
Because Ohio State's better. Because if Ohio State and TCU lined up tomorrow, you would bet on Ohio State. And
that's probably true.
And this is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the best 4 teams in the country to win a national championship.
I totally agree.
All right,
There's not a person in this room that if Ohio State or Alabama lined up tomorrow and played TCU that we would bet on TCU.
So let me
not
ask
one
you
of
this.
us.
If TCU loses the game by 10 points or less, you're knocking them out?
I am, yeah.
Do you think they get knocked out?
Yeah.
Lunch?
No, I don't like
Burger
having
and
lunch with
fries?
people. I'll drop something off.
Okay, so we can have a lunch bet on that?
That's fine.
A friendly lunch wager?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to win.
Or, awesome.
Yeah, I've been sick.
Okay, very good,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
Because
So if TCU wins the game, then this bet's
TCU
moot.
wins the game,
Right,
the
okay.
bet's
Right,
moot.
right.
Because
And I'm going based off of, like I said, like I think that's a conversation in the room. I think when they get to the room, the infamous room, and they all sit around and they go, TCU has 1 loss, Ohio State has 1 loss, who's better? 100% of the people go, Ohio State's better.
right, but if I'm not disagreeing
Remember
with
what moves the needle? Ratings. Who's getting higher rating?
that. Yeah, you're right about all that. There's no doubt.
And what about USC?
Well, the USC would be the 4th team if they get in.
There's a lot that can happen.
If USC
There's
loses,
a lot that can happen.
well, I don't think USC is going to lose twice to Utah in the same year.
I agree, but I also think USC. I mean, they have to win their game.
Yeah, USC has to win their game.
agree.
They're the other team.
That put them at 2 losses. So, right?
My interpretation of it, what I believe is going to happen, Georgia could lose by 50, they still get in. Michigan could lose by 50, they still get in.
No, nobody can lose by 50.
Well, okay, Georgia can lose
17.
31-10, and they're still going to get in. Michigan, likewise. TCU, I don't believe can get blown out. I agree with that. But I think if they lose by 10 points or less, TCU at 12-1 still gets in. Southern Cal has to win, which I believe they will, because I don't think Utah is going to beat them twice. But if Southern Cal loses, then the committee's got a real problem, because then you got 2 blue bloods, you got 2 passionate fan bases, you got 2 giants in Ohio State and Alabama. Alabama lost 2 games by 2 plays. A field goal to LSU, or field goal to Tennessee, and a 2-point conversion to LSU, whereas Ohio State at home got boat raced by Michigan.
Tennessee have 2?
Tennessee has 2. Yeah. 10-2.
Why are they ahead of Alabama? They beat Alabama.
Fair.
And
yes.
they've got a ton of top 25 wins. So.
I agree with you, but the reason is because they've lost more recently.
You cannot.
Well, I think it's because they lost their quarterback.
Well, that, and you put South Carolina put 60 on them. Mm-hmm. That's a bad look. It's a very bad look.
They beat Alabama.
They did.
I mean, it's we can talk about looks all we want. I think that's the best case scenario for the committee. Like, I think that rating for that college football playoff show would be ridiculous if you had all these questions. If TCU wins and everybody just holds serve, who's watching?
We got to go quick here because I got to take my kid to see Santa Claus. We have an 11:30 appointment, so he's very excited about it.
Appointment to see Santa
Yeah, you have
Claus?
an appointment now. Santa's a busy man. Santa is a busy guy. You have to make appointments now. Don't look at me. It's on the app. All right. That's what I was told today by the wife.
What's the app called?
I don't even know. I was told we have an 11:30 with Santa. That's what I was told. He's working us in. So before I go see Santa Claus, whatever, man, it's not my doing. All right. Do you think I could schedule an appointment with Santa?
No. I'm not making fun of you. I just didn't know that was a thing now.
Yeah, you have to make an appointment. It's all about the app.
Wow.
Give me the 4 teams you think get in on Saturday or on Sunday.
Well, I mean, I think TCU wins, so I think they get in.
So you have Georgia
chalk.
1, right?
I'll go chalk.
So you're going chalk.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, are they fitting Georgia for the rings already? Who's going to beat them?
Man.
Georgia, USC, and the semis? Are you kidding me? Georgia's going to crush them.
Listen, man. Caleb Williams is unfreaking real.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can all you want to.
Yeah.
So was Hendon Hooker.
If he came out right now.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker that's a good point.
If he came out right now, he would be the number 1 quarterback taken. Hendon Hooker would not. Okay, like he's going to be the number 1 quarterback next year. They have, a great receiver. I'm not saying they would beat him.
Right.
I'm just saying I wouldn't be so quick. I wouldn't be so quick to say Georgia's going to kill them.
The defensive game plan is going to be the same. I'm going to man up and I'm going to 5-star you to death, though.
Okay. I'm just saying from a talent perspective, when you got that dude, when you got Caleb Williams, you got a chance. The dude can get hot, and next thing you know, you're in a 40-38 game.
Yeah, well, just when USC lines up on 1st and 10, they're not looking at Cal anymore or Stanford or Arizona. They're looking at 5-star after 5-star after 5-star.
Okay, I mean, all right. They're looking at that with Ohio State has 5-star after 5-star. They just got the crap beat out of them. They have a little bit of a SEC bias down here.
Yeah.
In our world, how many USC games have you watched?
No, I've watched. I mean, front to end, none. How many times have I seen them play?
But
probably a half dozen.
To Hack's defense, though, every year an SEC team beats the living hell out of somebody
like Michigan last year. Oh, that Michigan defense, Aiden Hutchinson.
This happens every year.
Well, and that's what I was saying about Cincinnati and Michigan State too. Like those are two of them, right? Like I mean, I would much rather see Georgia USC than anybody TCU.
Agreed, but
I mean, right now, if you have Georgia USC, you have Michigan TCU. I would expect it to be Georgia and Michigan.
Oh, sure.
And then you're going to have all the talk about last year and what Georgia did to them last year.
And as much as I say that I don't want TCU in, I'll watch the hell out that Michigan TCU game. I pull for TCU every stretch of the way. I'll always pull for the underdog unless it's one of my teams in there or I've got a quarterback.
TCU has a horribly underrated quarterback. That Max Dugan, people sleep on him pretty good, don't they?
I read about him every day.
Well, you do.
He's all over my feed as far as awards and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean,
the general college football fan probably doesn't know who TCU's quarterback is, though.
The general college football probably can't tell you where TCU's at. You know what I mean? Like that.
Fort Worth,
that's
for the
fine.
record. Are they in Fort Worth? They're not in Fort Worth?
Who's in Waco? Is Baylor?
Baylor's in Waco.
Yeah,
Baylor's
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You made a point you didn't even know.
Wait a minute. That's kind of my point.
Oh.
That's kind of my point.
I thought you were saying that because you knew.
The only thing I know about TCU.
Hack's kind of got you there, Denny.
No, that was my point.
All right.
I was thinking, in my head, I'm like, where are they?
Yeah.
But I don't even care at that point. That's why I love the 12-team playoff. I'm just a fan of good football games. I'm just a fan. If you put two teams that the game means something and everybody's playing, I'm going to watch that game.
Championship Saturday will be fun, except for the SEC, because again, that game is meaningless. But Friday night, probably the game of the week, Utah and USC.
Oh, that's Friday night.
Yeah, it is Friday night, tomorrow night. He is Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. That's Graham Marsh. This has been Gator Bites on the 1010XL.com podcast network and on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. I'll tell Santa you say hello. Now that I have an appointment booked.
We'll get an appointment.
And we'll do it again next week.
All right.
Thanks, Denny.